couple of months ago, I had a list of ideas for free mini campaigns I wanted to create, and I was telling people about them and seeing which ones they thought I should make. And one of my ideas on the list got some very polarizing opinions. Some thinking it was going to be incredible, and some thinking it was going to be dumb, kinda weird, and unlikely that many people would want to play it. But something inside me knew. This idea was going to be amazing if I could pull it off. That this incredibly stupid idea, and I do mean stupid, would stand out and it would be unforgettable. And it worked out. My players literally by the end of the short campaign asked if they could just play it again. It's time we follow our most unhinged ideas, the dumbest ones we can possibly think of, and discover greatness. So let's talk about how to come up with something unique and implement it. And at the very end, I'm going to talk about something a little more for the advanced players, the people who are up for a challenge that could pay off very heavily. Okay, so you're in a little bit of a rut, and you want the simplest, least effort way to get out of it. No problem. I get it, not everyone has a ton of time to do a lot of extra things. Quick, clean, and simplest. Just change your world setting. Almost all of D&D players have spent probably 90% of their total games ever in a Gothic or medieval European setting. It's a classic, I get it, but you don't need it. Now before you say, okay, I'll put them on a boat. Pirate theme. Guys, that's still a classic, it's just on an ocean now. Medieval, Gothic, and pirates are fine, and I really have nothing against them. But I mean, get crazy with this. Put your other interests into the game. There's a reason why so many people love the Feywilds, and it's because it's honestly just fucking weird. So get weird with it. You've probably seen D&D shows that do this. Dimension 20 is an absolute master at weird worlds, giving you odd worlds to explore with childlike wonder. But you don't even have to go as far or be as creative as they do with it. You can just simply pick a movie and plop your players into it. Like, maybe we hijack the idea from the Pets movie. Your players are now a group of fluffy pets living in modern times, tasked with saving a family heirloom from burglars. Or maybe your players are a squadron inside Halo. You can use a single reference point like this to create a whole new world that feels refreshing. Or you can modify that reference point. Adding a genre that isn't expected with your world theme can make it feel a little more unique, and often hides what you took inspiration from. But you'll find that even media uses this trick all the time too. You might even find that you basically make something that kind of already exists by accident. For example, a James Bond theme world with an element of comedy might come across like Archer. Or a pop idol group world with a magical girl theme might result in K-pop Demon Hunters. You can see how these twists often make some of the best media across the years. And there's nothing wrong with your campaign being similar to that of a show. Chances are that your players haven't played in a K-pop Demon Hunters world, and this would be a perfect fit if you have a bunch of friends who really love music, or just being bards. World settings and themes are a great start, but you're not limited to just them to make your game feel unique. You also have to remember that your players, well, they mostly care about themselves, and the biggest change they'll notice is things that directly impact them and how they play. The easiest version of doing this is just changing the party dynamic. That means instead of being a group of heroic adventurers that met in a tavern one fateful evening, you may alter it to throw them off what they might expect from a typical adventuring party. For example, playing as villains can be a fun, refreshing campaign. A group of kids in a school, a family, or a military squadron are great examples that affect how the players interact with each other, putting less work on your shoulders. Or if you want to get really out there, dynamics like that of the Midnight Club would make a really interesting campaign. And if you know, you know. But make sure you invite the right people to that group. There are dynamics that affect more than just how the players interact with each other, but also how they interact with the world. For example, I bet you've never played a game where your party is intentionally a group of serial killers. Sure, we might have played with murder hobos before, but what if that's the whole point of the campaign? The consequences of being murder hobos, but trying to still do so. Now, keep in mind that you need to communicate this with your party before you start playing. In fact, you should preferably do it when you're even just asking players if they want to play. These types of dynamics are not interesting to everybody, so just double check beforehand. Okay, everything we've talked about here might seem a little tame and not bordering the pure unhinged stupidity I talked about earlier. So let's talk about what I made. What was breaking that boundary? I was listening to some creepypastas, and I came across one that was a 911 call. A spooky little jaunt that you hear from a very limited third-person view. And that sparked the idea in me. What if your players aren't the players in your campaign at all? What if they are directing the people in the campaign, but not actually the players themselves? You see why this idea might have got a bit of a polarized opinion on it. Yeah. I spent a couple weeks crafting and scheming, and I came up with an alternative rules-light version of D&D, where you are chocked full of utility spells, including combat-like scenarios that push you to think outside the box, to go beyond the typical narrative of D&D combat. A game of control, of outsmarting, where sometimes just talking is better than even casting a spell. So what are the players playing as? Are they 911 operators like the spooky pasta? Well, in my mind, a 911 operator of a typical fantasy world is not a 911 operator. Though it could have been someone with clairvoyance, and that would have made a perfectly fine version of this. But I went with their gods. In this mini-campaign, the players play as gods affecting the world below them, watching over the city and trying at all costs to keep the faith people have in them so that they can keep their powers and survive. And if you're someone whose group loves puzzles, roleplay, or thinking outside the box, my dumb idea that ended up honestly turning out really great will be a perfect fit, and it's available for free on my Patreon, so go check it out, links in description. When it comes to dumb ideas that become masterpieces, it's normally built with a small stepping stone of weird additions, like world settings, thematics, and party dynamics. But in some cases, you get so struck with an actually weird idea like I did. And in those times, I think the best thing to do is really to actually reel it back a bit, so it's not completely crossing out of the comfort zone. People were scared of my idea, because it sounded foreign, but the moment I put it back into that cliché fantasy world, it felt familiar despite being weird. You see, unique ideas shouldn't feel overwhelming, and this is actually really easy to achieve. Just put normal mechanics into a weird world, or put weird mechanics into a normal world. This way, there will always feel like there's some amount of familiarity to your players. You might have guessed by now what the more difficult thing to create something unique is. But honestly, it's also the most effective thing: changing mechanics. And I know some people will say, well, why not just play a game that does this for you instead of D&D? Well, yeah, you can do that, if a game exists and you know of it. But honestly, it's really fun to make your own mechanics every now and then. Sometimes they won't work out, and you should be ready to change them on the fly or just drop them like all playtests for a game are. But I believe it's worth trying out. Make your weird ideas possible in whatever your favorite or most comfortable game is. This is definitely something a first-time DM probably can't do, but I bet a lot of you listening to this can. So let's talk about some ways to make it a little less daunting for the first-time homebrewers. First of all, you don't have to live under a rock. Even though I love my rock, if you choose to use your favorite TTRPG, you can still look at how other TTRPGs, board games, or even video games achieve similar things. Just keep in mind when using video games as a frame of reference, the difference in pacing and speed that happens. Something that takes 2 seconds in a video game will last 30 minutes in a TTRPG. This is why we hate stunning players. The alternative method here is just to Frankenstein something from the game you're already in. Most commonly, we see this as 2 monster stat blocks mashed together. But, for example, in my mini-campaign, I took almost every utility spell in all of D&D, stripped it of flavor so that the players and DMs get to season their own spells, and I challenge you, by the way, to go check them out and come up with the most interesting flavor you can for these spells. Once again, over on my Patreon. Go check it out, it's free. And then I altered them to be less strong and more evenly matched, taking a single action to cast, to match the pacing of my game, since players won't be spending time swinging swords or throwing fireballs. They'll be casting only utility spells, so they needed to last a shorter duration and take a bit longer and be less frequently cast. Making your D&D homebrew dreams come true can end up being really hard or really easy, just depending on the scope you're going for. It can be as simple as everyone plays a melee character but is ranged and the floor is loaded with traps, or it could be a deep dive into the depths of numbers and balancing. But whatever you choose, try some campaign that feels different, whether it's my free one, someone else's, or your own. And I'd love to hear about the most unique campaign you've ever played in, and have a fantastic day.